Commence the live. It has begun. That's a Shang Tsung reference for those of you that are Mortal Kombat fans. Are there any Mortal Kombat fans? Is that still a thing? I don't know. Maybe. For some reason, Mortal Kombat really like the original movie. The new one was great. It was everything I wanted. But the original movie really like grabbed a soft spot in mine and my friends' hearts. I think because it was kind of campy, had cool music. Uh, the world of Mortal Kombat's kind of weird and feels a little bit like they threw it together after the fact, but at the same time, it's kind of fun. And anyhow, Mortal Kombat. Also, when I was young, the video games that really grabbed a hold of me, that really got me, were fighting games. I think that's also the reason why I loved squash so much. Like they're very squash and fighting games are very similar, where in a lot of video games, you're like playing maybe cooperatively or by yourself against a computer that's throwing missiles and bullets and lasers and whatever after you, or cheeses or apples or whatever the game happens to be. Whereas in a fighting game, it's you and the other person, and you each have a balanced set of moves, much like a squash game, and then you're trying to kind of outsmart the other player. You're trying to beat them in this like mental rock paper scissors game. So anyhow, Street Fighter 2 came out, which was the dawn of fighting games and really was like super exciting to me. I remember seeing it for the first time. I think I was with my brother either in a mall somewhere in like America or at an airport. Hey, Evan, good morning. And I was like, what the hell is this? This thing looks awesome. Look at all the stuff happening. And then shortly after that, I found like Mortal Kombat was released, and Mortal Kombat was kind of like, what if we took a fighting game and then we made it incredibly gory, and you could tear someone's heart out as a finishing move, or rip their head along with their spine off of their body? That would be cool. And so, might sound horrible to you, but like as a kid and a boy who was kind of like not morbidly obsessed or anything like that, but like that's something kind of like badass. And it's a video game. And I was like, oh my God, this is wild. And so Mortal Kombat had a very special place in my heart. Not nearly as deep and as rich a fighting game. Mortal Kombat's fighting mechanics were pretty trite, pretty weak, but like its graphics were really cool. The story behind it was weird. The characters were really neat. So it had a lot going for it, even though as far as like long-term playability, it was not as good. Evan, I had Super Street Fighter Turbo for my SNES, and boy did my brother and I play a lot of that, and boy did that create a lot of fights because I would beat him and then get really mad with me. Do you remember friendships and babalities, Evan? That was, I think they introduced those in Mortal Kombat 2. You could like make the opponent dance at the end, as opposed to tearing their arms off and killing them with them. Featured this week on the live show. This is exciting. We've got a new mug, and look at that guy. He's huge. That's about one half of Adam's head units of girth. So that's a big mug. We were in Vancouver checking out a store called Parliament that has housewares. I'll show you some of the stuff I've brought back from Parliament. I really like their aesthetic. The owner is really cool. I came across this place when my friend Wes and I were doing some shopping a while back, and I loved everything they had. I ended up buying a ton of gifts for clients. So one of the things they sell are these, oh, I've got this upside down. They call these memory blocks. This is by an artist locally here in Vancouver. This is not totally local, called Sid Dickens. And they're just gorgeous sort of ceramic tiles. They have no function other than being really pretty. There's a good heft to them. And then they, of course, have like a thing to hang them on. This one is called Resilience. And then each one has a little piece here. Brilliant light that illuminates the sky. You are my force and strength. Very attractive to me. They look nice in a garden. I've sent some of these to clients. We've got a bunch around our house because it just looks so cool. And there's a nice like solidity to them, which is very appealing. And I also picked up this piece while I was there. This is a favorite of mine. This is what everyone in the world is doing, and we're calling it a breakthrough. So this is a very profound piece of art. It's also quite striking. This guy's like, he's got his work cut out for him. This quad is engaged. This big gold ball. And so what we're doing in our lives is we run into the stuff that we don't like, that we feel in resistance to. Hey, Tommy. Evan, huge fan of Tekken as well. Big Tekken fan. And even more so than that, the lesser known, less popular Virtua Fighter was really one of my all time favorites. Very, very deep fighting game. Anyhow, this dude, um, he what happens is we get our buttons installed as we're growing up. Our buttons are the stuff we can't be with. They're a reflection of the judgments we have about ourselves that then are pushed outwards. So if you have no capacity to be with your own arrogance, as an example, the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to be like, well, I'm not really that arrogant. I would never be arrogant. Now, the truth is that we as humans have the capacity for everything. We hold all of the entirety of the ways of being and our existence within ourselves. And given the right settings and time, we're going to show up a certain way. It's just in our nature. We'd like to believe otherwise, but in my experience, doing this work for a decade, it's not true. What's true is that we have the capacity for all of us, all of it. And so from our judgment of arrogance, we can no longer see when we're being arrogant. And so our internal judgment actually more often than not sounds like, I would never be that way. I'm just not that kind of person. Or we might be kind of charitable and be like, I would never be that way, except certain times I know I can be a little bit. So we make we carve out a little exception where it's acceptable, or we don't like it, but we're like, I'm willing to sit with it. And then, judge the crap out of ourselves when we do show up in there. And then we project that onto other people. So then we judge the hell out of other people for their arrogance. How fucking dare you? So often the first part when we're doing shadow or survival mechanism work is that Bay and I will help someone distinguish their shadows. And then the person will immediately be like, I would never do that. I was doing that with a client just yesterday, and she was like, oh, I would never, oh, I don't like this. I wouldn't show up that way. And as you lovingly sit with people and support them through this, they start to see like, oh, okay, I can kind of see some places where I do that. And then the first stage of practice with this work is to go out and notice your shadows as they're showing up. Anyhow, what this guy represents is that whatever we judge internally, we judge externally, and then we try to create our life so that we don't have to have any of that stuff we judge show up. So we're like, oh, when I'm around arrogant people, I just feel like there's no room for me to talk, and they're so annoying, and all the space gets taken, and it's really draining. So we have all this story about how it is because we can't be with it because of our judgment. And then so what we attempt to do is eliminate that from showing up in our life. We contract away from life by preventing life from coming, like the abundance of life, which includes judgmental people, arrogant people, selfish people, really loving people, really cold, all of it, all of people. We contract and try to keep the door shut so that that aspect of life can't get in. And that's what this is about. That's what this little guy right here working so hard is doing. So this ball is the abundance of life. It's irresistible. You can do nothing about this. It's going to make its way into the cracks, the nooks, the crannies, the places where you have not managed to create an airtight seal, despite your very best attempts to lock life in place and keep those arrogant people or those judgmental people or those whatever people out of your life. Boom, it's here. And then this resistance that we have is us trying so hard to not let that stupid, obnoxious amount of life that we hate trample over us. So this is a reminder for me of what we're all up to. Unwittingly, we're all doing some flavor of this. And what sets us free is we just allow this ball to roll down its path. We stop trying to resist it. We stop trying to force something. We stop trying to be in resistance to life. And instead, we open ourselves up to be in the allowance of life. This is why most breakthroughs often come from allowing rather than doing something, rather than forcing something in the world. Or, like a lot of people, we'll go back to this guy, it's so illustrative. A lot of people are in this situation, and then what they believe to be a breakthrough is like they create a new system that like is a wedge they can put in here, and then they create a special chair that allows him to sort of resist with even more force, and then they create a pane of glass that comes down between him and the ball and allows him not to see the ball, so then he's not worried about the next time he has all of this stuff, and it doesn't work because the ball's still there pushing against us. So really the path is to release all of that, allow it to just exist. Yeah, slow it all down and sync with the rhythm and the spirit of life. I love that quote as well, Evan. Evan's quoting from A Shift in Being, phenomenal book on coaching, spirituality, living fully expressed. Morning, Andrew. Andrew's missing out on the video game conversation. He says he was definitely a big Street Fighter fan. Okay, who were your guys? So Andrew, who did you play in Street Fighter? Who's your favorite? Evan, who did you play? Um, I've been playing fighting games non-stop pretty much all the way through. So there's a giant full arcade-sized joystick in my living room with arcade quality buttons and a joystick. And in the last Street Fighter 5 kind of changed things up, but in Super Street Fighter 4, or just Street Fighter 4 at this point, I was a Dhalsim player, and in the top, I think it was top 100, maybe top 300 in the world, which is not total. I mean, that's kind of cool. Morning, Katie. But there's not a lot of people that played that particular character, so it kind of came and goes. But it's neat. It's a neat. There's an area of mastery for me. I was quite obnoxious for people to play against. Okay, I've drunken tea from my giant mug. I've got cool topics. Big thanks to Andrew and David for their suggestions. Where we're going to start today is with micro expressions and determining deceit. So I'll provide a bit of preface for this. I always read that word as preface, but preface. Evan, big Ryu fan. Ryu is like Ryu, I don't know how to say his name properly. I'll say it like a Westerner and call him Ryu. Ryu is the fundamentals of that game. When I was starting to learn Street Fighter V, everything that I read is like, start here because his character contains all of the fundamentals for what you need to learn to play this game well. He's got a fireball to zone people out. He's got good combos. He's got good anti-air, all of that stuff. I'm fascinated by how much depth we can create in a game that ostensibly has a pretty simple starting point. That's always interesting to me. So anyhow, let's talk about micro expressions. If any of you have seen the show Lie to Me with Tim Roth, which is interesting because Tim Roth, great actor, don't see very much of him these days. Lie to Me was a show where he had this special institute, excuse me, that studied micro expressions. And the April, you're getting in on it. She's a Chun-Li fan. I like this. Micro expressions is this idea that if you say something to me, my face and the muscles in my face are going to betray how I feel about what you've said before my brain processes what you've said. And then all of my kind of frontal lobe and stuff kicks in. And then it's like, I hate what they just said, but I'm going to smile because I want them to feel good. And prior to all that, there's this notion of a micro expression. Like you can see maybe my eyes kind of do that a little bit, or my lip curls a little, I don't know, whatever, stuff like this. April, I love video games. I love video games. Anime, I like in bits and bobs. Often a lot of it misses me, although I have great appreciation for the art form. But it's just, it doesn't grab me this, but like video games, I'm obsessed with. So we've got these things called micro expressions. I don't know how established the science is behind them. It may be very well established. It may be, I've not checked into it recently for a few reasons, which I'm going to get into. But I was on a call with someone who'd reached out and they're like, hey, we really love your book. We'd like to feature it on this website, blah, 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 blah. So I'm like, sure, whatever. Let's get on the phone. We'll talk. And the guy was really lovely. He was quite brilliant. He'd clearly done some research. He'd listened to some of my podcast, watched some of my videos. So I was like, okay, cool. This person's not just some rando reaching out. So we got into a conversation. And by the end of it, he was like, we'd love to feature your book. And then what we do is a profit split. You don't have to do anything, but we feature your book and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, great. I care less. That sounds great. And then he was like, and there's like a couple other things I want to offer in terms of a collaboration. And I want to give you some suggestions that I think might be helpful for you. And so the suggestions he had was like one, a website called listennotes.com. I'm just going to put this in the thing here, listennotes.com, where you can search this page and it'll give you a whole bunch of podcasts, and then you could like reach out to them and be like, hey, I speak on this. Would you like to have me come and talk on your podcast as a guest? So cool concept. I was like, oh, that's great. Um, the second one he suggested was like, go do a TED Talk. You got to do a TED Talk, man. Do a TED Talk, um, which is really valid. And I've just sort of I've been up to too many other things to go through that application process and blah, 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 blah. And while we had a TEDx Victoria, I was the leadership, I'd enrolled them in me being their leadership coach for that structure for a couple of years. So I've had plenty of involvement. I volunteered with it for about 5 years. So yeah, wisdom in that. And then the last thing he shared was, are you familiar with micro expressions, Adam? I said, totally. Yeah, I think I've got an idea. And he said, these are really great because I even teach some of this stuff, Adam. And what you can do is you can start to see what someone really feels about something before. I'm going to come back to the video games, guys. You guys are just putting too much juice in the comments for me to ignore that. But let me get to this point. We'll take an intermission. So he's like, you can really see how someone feels before their stuff kicks in, and that's really powerful for like transformational work. Blah blah blah. So now I'm going to talk about what I believe and what I hold to be true and my thoughts about that. First, we're going to get digression back into the Street Fighter world. So Katie, you've got great taste. Oh man, Tekken tournaments too. You're a badass girl. Tekken Tag was a cool game. The tag, what would I call it? The tag mechanic was always a little at times frantic for me. I think just because I was kind of the old guard and never fully got into that sort of idea of how you could do combos on combos on combos. I wonder, did you ever play Rival Schools? That was a game that had it was 3-person teams and had a tag format. You had to download that game. It was only a Japanese release, but man, was that a cool format. And but Tekken in general was an incredible, it still is an incredible series. And then Andrew, what do you have to say? Definitely Ryu, Ken, of course, the two kind of sibling character. They weren't actually siblings, but they're like sibling in their energetics. And then E Honda. I loved E Honda too, especially once they gave him like some command throws. So the ability in the later games to zone you out and then to get up close and then smash you on the ground was very appealing to me. Dalsum was an underdog. I have this silly story. I remember. So the thing about Dalsum in this, I'm going to describe a bit about this game before we come back to micro expressions, is that Street Fighter is a game where every character has a range it's best at fighting in. And most of those characters, some of them are really up close. The grapplers want to be right in your face. And because then they can force you to be in a guessing game between, do I hold block and not get hit by their attack, but at the same time that puts me at the risk of them hurling me across the screen and doing unbelievable damage to me. What do I do? So that's where the grapplers want to be. Some of the characters are really good at like the mid-range. Some of them are really good at moving in and out. They're what we call a zoning characters. They can move in quick, peck you a bunch, move out, and you're like, I can't find my rhythm. And Dalsum, who was a yoga master who fought, never mind that contradiction, was a long range character, the longest of range character. So while most characters had to be at least midway across the screen to attack, Dalsum could be all the way at the furthest reach of the screen and still strike you. And that was where he was at his best. He was very slow moving. And anytime you were playing that character, your job was to keep everyone fighting you on the far side of the screen. And their job was try to get all the way up into your face, because then you had a lot of trouble getting them back out. So you were trying to zone them out, keep them out of their zone, and then you can just harass them and break them down. And I remember growing up, I always would go to Mayfair Lanes. It was a bowling alley as a kid. My parents were very concerned about how much I loved video games. Later led me to a computer science degree, so it wasn't all bad, but they really worked hard to not let my brother and I get into video games, and me especially, but it didn't work. And I'd always go to the smoke-filled bowling lane that smelled and had the sounds of bowling and pins being reset, and they had Street Fighter there that you could play for a quarter. And I just remember feeling so bad because there was this kid that dumped a bunch of money into that machine playing me, and he didn't learn. So what he would try to do is jump in to attack me, and I would knee him out of the air, and he'd fall down. And then he'd jump in to try to attack me, and I'd knee him out of the air. And as this happened, I just started to laugh. It was funny to me that like this was just going down. And I was like conscious of it, like, you know, when you get the giggles and you can't stop yourself. Johnny Z's, yes, Andrew, me too. And so I sort of turn away and try to like laugh into my shoulder. And he must have put $2, like just played at me for like a half hour before he finally beat me. And as I walked away, he he made fun of me by like snickering at me, laughing at me like that as I walked away. And I just burst out laughing. I felt horrible, but it's just one of those moments where you feel bad, but you got the giggles in you and you can't do anything about it. Okay, let's get back to talking about micro expressions now. No apologies necessary, Katie. Agreed, Andrew. Marvel vs. Capcom was awesome. I really liked that game. I liked that you could play that guy. I can't remember his name. He was an alien with like, he was almost like an octopus kind of alien, and he'd spin, and he was cool. Shuma Gorath, I think was his name, and Blackheart. I liked him too. So, okay, so this guy says micro expressions. He talks to me about that. I think you'd really enjoy it. I didn't, maybe I betrayed something with my micro expression, but for the most part, I just was like, I really appreciate, I'm in the practice of appreciating this man for wanting to support and serve me. That's a beautiful thing, whether or not I'm on board with it. So what I'm hearing, you know, he may be intending to communicate something different, but what I'm hearing from him is like, oh, this micro expressions thing's really good because you can get underneath someone's deceit, you can get underneath the stuff they're not telling you, and you can like kind of get it out of them much faster. That on the surface sounds like a coach's dream come true. Like, oh my goodness, you could really pull out the juice. You could get the stuff out of people much faster. You wouldn't be stymied by their resistance or unwillingness. And what that is the antithesis of what coaching is about. So this is, to me, a really interesting place where what occurs on the surface and why coaching is so challenging and why people believe that they can do it and then repeatedly fail and refuse to get training and you know, blah, 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 is kind of belied by this thing we're going to talk about. So the belief inherent there is like, oh, people, if people are only willing to listen to other people, if people are only willing to open themselves to what's there, if people are only willing to have someone else come in and excavate stuff for them, then they could be with their truth, and then blah, 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 blah. That's a really understandable position because it's kind of how most of us by default relate to the world around us. We see people and we're like, if only they did what I did, or if only they listened to what I did, maybe I'll give them some advice and maybe they'll listen. I talk to people who are like, oh yeah, I'm not really that trained as a coach yet, Adam, but I'm starting to do some work, and you know, I even give some advice to my friends and they really appreciate it. So it's really human. It's really in our nature to have this kind of belief. But the heart of coaching, the heart of transformational work is recognizing that I don't know at all what is best for the person over there. And further, my work is to trust them to find their own path, to trust them to unfold and to discover and to uncover whatever there is for them to uncover. And so if I start to learn micro expressions or NLP or whatever else to surgically kind of pull that piece out of them in opposition to what they're telling me, right? They might say like, hey, I feel really happy that you said that. I'm just making stuff up. And then I'm like, no, you don't, because I saw your micro expression. There's not a lot of learning for them in that. What there is the experience of them being caught out. And instead, my actual work is rather to be curious about what is being felt in the field between us. So a micro expression is kind of like, you could use it like a wayfinder, like a signpost along the highway, where you're like, oh, interesting, their eyes twitched a little bit. What's that about? So we could use this stuff to kind of train ourselves to figure out how to blah, 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 blah. But all of that just gets you in at the surface level. The real work happens after that. It happens in who you're being with the person. It happens in how you're showing up with them. And what I find, I imagine, there's a bit of a left turn, but like I imagine if someone were to watch me, they might say like, oh, Adam must have done some work learning about micro expressions because he's really tuned into what's going on with that person. But the truth is, I'm not studying their face. I'm not analyzing their speech patterns. I'm not in my head intellectually trying to distinguish what's going on with them through my brain. There's a FedEx driver talking loudly out my window. He might be trying to get in touch with you guys. So I'm not trying to intellectually assess what's happening. Instead, what I'm doing is I'm getting really deeply into my heart, and then I'm really deeply getting intimate and connected with someone. That doesn't mean we're talking about sex or something like that. It just means that I'm taking on all of the work I can before this session and then bringing it to the session so I can be as undefended and as out of my head as possible and really be in the experience of us together. That requires a depth of trust. It requires a depth of trust in myself that I can let down all of my sophistication and charm and whatever else I've learned to bring to stay safe. It requires a depth of trust in them that they're willing to play with me and meet me there. And from there, you don't analyzing micro expressions and stuff like this becomes, well, it's like a bit like in the Matrix at the end where Neo can see all the code. And the agents, for those of you that remember the Matrix, the agents are like trying to punch him through Kung Fu. And he could engage with them in a fight from Kung Fu. But now that he's got like the ability to see the depth of the code, it becomes unnecessary. It's like a bunch of stuff on the surface that is no longer really that important, no longer relevant. So the whole conversation about stuff like micro expressions and NLP or any of that kind of stuff that has validity on the surface, it's not that it's wrong. It's just that as you create deeper levels of trust, intimacy, and connection with the person in front of you, you don't need to figure any of this out because it's already there to be felt. You don't have to learn a micro expression if you're willing to get truly undefended. You can feel it. You can feel an experience in your body when something happens. There's lots of times where I'll be on the call with someone and I can feel energetically, I think that they're up and pacing. And I'll ask them like, hey, are you standing up and walking around? They're like, yeah, I can feel that. Hey, Rachel. And so my intention here is not to make micro expressions. I'm bringing NLP into the NLP feels a little bit along these lines to me. I have not studied it, but I've talked and engaged with a lot of people. And Hannah, I absolutely adore the metaphor you just put into the space there. Hannah says the surface stuff is like measuring a rose with a ruler. So you can do it and you can learn a bunch of stuff and it might help you understand the rose a bit more. And from there, you could even derive, oh, this is blah, 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 blah. But there is such a richness available to us below that. And the more we get stuck on that surface piece and the more significance we make out of it, the more it holds us in the surface and the more it keeps us from getting down into the depths that are really available to us. And so micro expressions, awesome. If that really jazzes you up, if it excites you, that's cool. This doesn't say it's wrong or that you should study it or any of that stuff. I just want to illuminate that there's a level of depth available in each and every one of us, in every relationship we find ourselves in, that's always there. It's in the field. And what there is for us to do is to become more, to heal more of the trauma in our bodies, to heal more of the wounding, so that we can be more open in our nervous system. And the more we open our nervous system, that's the physical thing, and our energetic system and our emotional system, the more open we can be, the more we can feel over there. And then all of this stuff, again, it stops being like trying to figure out intellectually how to ride a bike, and instead you just ride the bike and you enjoy the scenery and you're like, oh, need to turn a little bit. Oh, something happened. Oh, I can pick up on this. And so therein lies the effortlessness of this work, the beauty of it, the magic of it. I'm going to love the stuff you guys are sharing and just the enthusiasm I'm feeling. It sounds like this is kind of there for all of us. The one thing I want to speak into the space a little bit, because I'm often conscious of my tendency to do this, is that we hold people bringing or excited about this stuff with absolute love and reverence, so that it doesn't become, oh, you're still operating at the micro expression level or whatever. How dumb and shallow of you. If only you could get here. We we can only get here through that. So we want to hold space and love and allow for all of this and continue to go deeper and deeper and deeper into what's available. The analog to this, another place that I've noticed this is a lot of the work that Rachel and I do in my own life and my own conversations with her. Rachel's my coach, for those of you that don't know, is the realm of the spiritual. A lot of my work these days feels like it's about continuing to open my relationship with spirit, partner with spirit, allow whatever there is to come forward to come forward. I'm a shepherd for it, but life unfolds as me, as opposed to life is happening by me, like me over here forcing and creating stuff into life. There's something deeper where it's like God, spirit, and everything moves in life as me, just like it does as you. So I'm going to talk a bit about my relationship to spirit and how it's evolved over time. Yes, Anna. Although I don't, intuitive and obvious, I think intuitive and obvious probably to a child. But of course, we learn all this scaffolding for good reason as we grow up and become socialized. And then we kind of we have to learn how to be able to choose the scaffolding. And that part, I think, is often unobvious. I take your point. I know exactly what you mean, or at least I think I do. But I want to hold like a bit of reverence for sometimes when we say obvious, that becomes then an easy thing to judge ourselves for. I should just know this. Oh, why don't I get this? It's so obvious. And it's like, it is to a child, but to an adult, it becomes quite obscured, just like the way magic works. So, my initial relationship growing up, I was raised by I would say that there was no real place for God in my family. My grandfather on my mom's side was a pastor and a farmer. Cool, like sort of pedigree, I guess. And I really think of him, I feel often I'm following in his footsteps because the way he felt about what he did as a pastor was there is something greater available than all of us. There is power in community and connecting beyond just our individuality. And if religion and being a pastor is the way to empower that, that's what I'll do. And so that's what he chose into. Coaching is my vehicle for that. But I think, if he was around and he and I sat down and talked and he could give me some of the peanuts he always used to be eating, I think we would agree together that we're following similar work on this planet. So while that was my mom's upbringing, the church had a large role. My parents were fairly, I don't know if they describe as agnostic or atheistic, but my experience was fairly atheistic. We were very logical, pragmatic, science-based. We held logic and intellectualism in very high regard, which I still do. And so the window of my world was science. Like that was the entire frame of this video was like science. That's the way that you look at the world. That's what's available. Everything is to be thought of and assessed through that frame. And then over time, I was like, I want to like develop some kind of experience of spirituality, or perhaps that naturally came forward from me. And so what happened was I took spirit, this nebulous concept, and I put it inside this window called science. So the way that would work would be like, I might be like, okay, well, the universe at large is deterministic, meaning if you had a complete understanding of all the movements of all the particles in the world somehow, and you could model all of that and keep track of all that and had formula that explained that, then we could determine the next state of the universe and the next state and the next state, and we could predict as far as we wanted out into the future based on, the movement of the particles and physics and all of that. Fundamental first principles of physics. So that's like science all the way, right? Hardcore science. Everything's deterministic. There's not even free choice. There's the illusion of free choice, blah, blah, blah. And then inside that framing, I had this space called spirit. And that was sort of like all of that. And yet, we don't know what happened before the Big Bang. And so maybe there is a God, maybe there's not. There's all this room for stuff. But like it's kind of where this frame ends, that's where spirit can exist and only there. And it's kind of like within the bounds of this frame, what it's determined it cannot find, that's where spirit can fit. So there's this window called science, and then there's this tiny little area where spirit can fit. So this is a little bit like the analog here is like the science window and framing and all of that that I was holding was a little bit like the surface with the micro expressions kind of thing. It's not that there's not validity. It's not that it doesn't point us towards some kind of truth. It's not that it can't be used for great effect and to great benefit and that it doesn't better all of us and blah, 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 blah. But it's a limiting perspective and it what's the right word here? Not quite hides, but it obscures the depths that's available. And so as time's gone on and I've worked with this and experienced breakdowns and then created breakthroughs, what's happened is a shifting of how those two are framed. Good morning, Heather. Just talking about spirit and science. So the frame for science, it's not shrunk, but spirit has expanded to be far greater. So science still has every bit as much space there, but my perspective and the way I'm holding all of this has grown far greater. And now the window of science fits in and looks into a tiny little bit of the spiritual existence that we're all in. So it doesn't mean science is smaller. It is relative to the perspective I now have, but it's the same absolute size. It's just that we've zoomed out and I can see so much more available and there's so much more room for possibility and for that which I don't know and for that which we can't ever know. And from there, there's a lot more available because I don't have to have everything figured out. Everything doesn't have to be determined. It's not necessary to like know the answer to figure out how to get there to do that before I can trust or have faith or practice a belief. And if all of this stuff sounds esoteric to you and kind of weird, that's okay because it does to me as well. And that's a beautiful thing because before I wouldn't have been able to utter it because it's like, well, it's esoteric. So then I don't have it figured out. So then, and then once again, we're in that place where I'm trying to stuff everything in to this little science frame that doesn't quite give me the same richness of experience in my life. Hannah, you say, I remember the Big Bang being my God button too. Who pushed the switch? Yeah. These are brilliant questions. And on this note, I've just finished this. I've been reading a phenomenal science fiction series called The Three Body Problem. The three body problem is a famous problem in, I think it's physics, where you can model how two bodies, like the sun and the earth, will orbit more or less. But as soon as you have three bodies orbiting around each other, the system becomes far too chaotic, and there's no way to solve for that. We don't yet have any way in our theories or anything to figure out how do we determine where this planet's going to end up, because as soon as we think, oh, it's naturally going to go there, well, these planets are doing their own thing, and then that moves the other one out. And oh, Evan, it sounds like you've read it. How far along have you read? Yeah, I blasted through those books, and boy, are they phenomenal. It's written by a Chinese author too, and I really enjoy, first of all, the translation's very good. And to me, the gradient of a good translation is one, incomprehensible. It's just got too much of the original language's idiosyncrasies. You can't really figure out, you can't crack it from your frame and your language. So that's the incomprehensible, that's the farthest down. Then the middle level is it takes the work and it places it completely in the realm and frame of reference of your language. So it's as though the book was written by the author of your native language. So from Chinese author to English, I wouldn't even know it's written in Chinese. The very best translations shift it into my language, allow a bridge to go back and forth so I know the cultures, but still retain the idiosyncrasies and the foreignness of an alternative, of a different language. And so that's how these books have been translated. They're really well translated. The concepts are fascinating. The author, very very cool, wide opened thinker. And there's a lot of, as I've read them, the central premise, I don't want to spoil too much, but is like humanity discovers other civilizations in the universe. And it turns out the universe is a pretty dangerous place to advertise your existence to. And upon doing so, the other civilization sends an invasive fleet to destroy us so that they can take over our planet. And so as I read this and see what's happening, and there's like parts where I feel like really, I read and I go to bed and I'm like, my God, I feel dread and like this feels hopeless. And so when a good book can really evoke those emotions, holy crap. So I highly recommend that. The Three Body Problem. I'll just put it in uh, the comments here. Really recommend if you like science fiction. It is a jammy. It is phenomenal. I'm really enjoying it. So I'm on to the third and final book of the series, and then I don't know what I'm going to read. Okay, let's come to, I want to come to David's question next, which is stretching versus honoring our capacity. I'll summarize a little bit of what he's written here, which is how do we determine or distinguish what we want and going for it versus the capacity that we currently have? So basically talking about working with a gradient. And this applies not just to you in your own life, but to you as leader developing leadership. So with other people, remember that your job as a leader is to develop more leaders. And to do so means that you're going to be supporting them to stretch beyond their existing capacity. If people just keep operating inside their existing range, and all they do is get better, faster, more reliable inside that range, that's fine, but that's not really leadership. That's more like incremental growth. I should say this differently. That's not really transformational leadership, because transformational leadership is about, yes, growth, but also broadening your range. So to do that, you can think of it a bit like going to a gym. You go to the gym, you want to get swole, obviously, you want to get shredded. I assume that's what you're all here for. And there's this trade-off. If all I do is lift the weights that I'm comfortable lifting, and I'm like, yeah, I'm nailing these reps, I'm getting to I'm doing my sets, it's easy, this feels great, I'm not even that tired. Look at you idiots, huffing and puffing, morons. I'm never going to really grow. My body's not going to put on any muscle because it hasn't been stressed. It hasn't been, there's no reason for it to grow. And growing muscle is an inefficient thing as far as your system's concerned, right? Your body's calculus is basically like, do we need these muscles for the way we're currently living? If so, we're going to have to divert more food and nutrients to them, which means we're going to have to eat more, which means, blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, if we're not using them, let's let them atrophy. They'll shrink back down to the size that we do require for the lifestyle that we're living. Ingenious system, if you think about it. So when we go to the gym, we don't just want to do what we're already doing. I mean, it's not that that's bad. Maintaining is fine. But if we're trying to gain weight, to put on muscle, to strengthen our body, we have to push beyond the zone at which we're comfortable. But there is another range where we must stop. Because if you go to the gym and you've never lifted before, and suddenly you start trying to press 600-pound weights, if they have those, I'm pretty sure they have those at the gym, because I've seen guys wearing those really narrow, those narrow tank tops, where it's like a normal tank top has like a neck and then, like armholes, whereas the tank top is largely made of empty space. And then there's, hey, Mark, nice to have you with us. Tank top's largely made of empty space. You're buying empty space. And then there's the inconvenience of this patch of fabric. You know that. So those guys at the gym that have muscles on their muscles on their muscles, I think they have 600-pound weights for those guys. And if I went to that gym and was like, man, I want to look like that yesterday and started lifting those 600-pound weights, I'm not going to grow. I'm going to injure myself. I'm going to singlets. I'm going to injure myself and I'm going to tax the muscle unnecessarily, which is then going to have my body put attention and energy into healing the wound rather than strengthening that thing. So there's this window at which we could think of it like optimal transformation, growth, etc., that we need to aim for. So that's how it works physically with your body and weights. This works also with your being and your range. So if I have someone who is, let's say that part of what's in their way is their leadership, is they're really good at managing their time, but as soon as you give them a task beyond what they can currently manage for, they get like very defensive of their time and they're like, I just can't do this. There's no way. I'm sorry. And so that person's range allows for whatever they can currently figure out how to manage around their time and nothing more. A leader is going to be called on to grow their range. And so for this person, what might be required is for them to say yes to more than they can currently figure out how to handle. And that's going to be overwhelming at first. That's the only way that they will adapt and evolve and create the breakthrough, so as to learn how to own and be responsible for more. Now, part of the reason that they might be stuck at this period of time is because the only way they currently can figure out how to get everything done is to do it themselves, as an example. Remember, I can't tell this to them. You can't tell this to them. They have to discover this for themselves. So right now, they're like unconsciously thinking, okay, I can do X amount of stuff. That's going to require Y amount of time. I can be a yes to X amount of stuff requiring Y amount of time and no more. And then you're going to come along and be like, hey, we need you to take on more. We need you to own more of this stuff as a leader. And they're going to initially have resistance to that because they're like, well, I can't. And then what they're going to do is you're going to push them and they're going to be like, fine, I'll fucking do it or whatever. Maybe they'll be gracious about it. And they're going to try to use the same old strategy to now create Y plus 10 amount of time. So they're using the old pattern of doing X amount of work in Y amount of time, but now they've got X plus 10 amount of work, but still the same amount of time. And this is what creates what we call the breakdown. This is where the plates or the balls they've been juggling and are able to manage all fall to the ground and they feel like a failure, or they feel like whatever they feel like, but they feel like, this sucks. So this is the failure of your muscle in this instant. A leader, let me finish this and then I'll bring this into the conversation about leadership. So from all of that stuff falling down, only then can they start to reach a point of surrender and say, like, what I'm trying to do isn't working. Now, most people here, absent some support, are going to be like, therefore, what I need to do is go back to what did work. And to do that, I need to swipe off that plus 10 off my plate and go back to just X amount of work. This is natural. It's the default. It's what we will do left of our own accord, and it will not occur like we are turning away from transformation. It'll occur like we're more committed than ever to excellence, getting the job done, blah, 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 blah. It's time for some sippy tea. I feel you, Evan. I often have a time context. It's perennially a thing I'm moving beyond. So we have this situation where we've like broken down, we've surrendered, we're like, fuck, it's not working. What good leadership and coaching does is it supports you to stay the course rather than going back to what you knew. You can go back to what you know, but you will forever keep getting results that are a function of what you know rather than the next breakthrough. So when this person fails, says it's not working, gets supported, from there they might start to take a look and be like, with coaching and support, wow, how am I causing this to take so much time? What am I doing that doesn't seem to be working? Well, I try to do everything. And we're going to jump over a bunch of what the coaching conversation might look like, but where they might end up is realizing like, wow, maybe I need to delegate more. And maybe part of the reason I'm not doing that is because I'm afraid of making mistakes. And so maybe I'm going to have to be willing to make a few more mistakes. If I'm willing to do that, maybe I can start to delegate some more stuff. And instead of spending an hour doing the thing, I can spend 10 minutes with the person helping them understand and then let them do it at risk of maybe it doesn't work the first time. That's inefficient initially, right? What's efficient is doing what you already know. So they're going to come back to this, they're going to practice it, they're going to, On the other side of that, the breakthrough can be created. From here forward, they now have generated the ability to bring something other than doing everything themselves. And that's going to allow them every time now, they've got more range. So when they're given X plus 10, with X, they might be X amount of work, they might be like, you know what, I do feel like doing it all. But if they get more, now they have the capacity to say yes to it, and they can kind of work within this and be like, you know what, I think what there is for me to do is to help to bring some other people on board, blah, blah, blah. So really what happens is that possibility is now available to them, whereas in their previous range, it was not. So that whole dynamic if we bring that back into the metaphor of lifting weights, a good leader needs to work with their people to see what's the stretch for them. They're currently really reliable for X amount of work, but I see them as a leader in this organization, and they're going to need to be able to own and be responsible for more than X. So I'm going to give them, I'm going to support them, I'm going to enroll them in this, but I'm going to give them the task of doing X plus 10. We have to also be cognizant that sometimes we give people tasks that's like X plus 1,000,000 or X plus 100, not being aware that they're just not really being able to empathize with their capacity because we maybe already have that capacity, or we've already done that, or we're just, this is how it is for me and I have a way that works for this amount. And so again, we have to kind of be able to find that calibration. Where is the range of discomfort that will allow for transformation and growth, as opposed to the range of comfort that keeps them stagnant, or the range of wounding, the range of, I don't know what we'd call it, where they just get injured and they just fall to pieces and they can't actually grow. So this is the challenge. As coaches, as leaders, and as people committed to transformation in our own life, we're always trying to find, where is that range? How do we discover it? So now we come to David's question, now that we've set all this up. And he says, let's say I aspire to make 100K and work with only 6 clients. In this example, can you talk between acknowledging going for something outside of what's predictable, while at the same time being realistic with expectations, our current capacity to create that specific result? So what a lot of us would really love is if there was like a set rule that we could follow based on some dusty tome that tells us this is how you find the right level. This is where the gradient is. But how do you find out your gradient for lifting weights? How do you know where the place is? So one of the ways is you go to the gym and you try something. You'd be willing to feel stupid and look dumb. That's one way. You be in the practice of lifting weights and you discover what seems to work, what doesn't seem to work. The challenge here is that you're in it as you're lifting those weights. So while that's going to get you part of the way, it can also be challenging. And I've often gone to the gym and seen people that like their body has a certain shape where it's built, it's got musculature, but you can tell from their form, it's not going to go any further because they're lifting the weights in ways that allow them to kind of cheat through good lifting. And as a result, the muscle has adapted to that, but it's not going to get any higher. They can't develop beyond that. So that's part of the risk of doing this work ourselves. We can kind of think, okay, I'm taking that step. This feels uncomfortable for me. I'm failing. I think that's good because, I need to have that discomfort. But then we can experience what, not Seth Rogen, Seth Godin. We experience what Seth Godin calls the dip. And the dip is the place of the breakdown. It's where we're doing the stuff we think is working and we fall through the breakdown. The weights fall apart, our muscles are aching, the balls we've been juggling fall to pieces. The danger is that without any outside support, there are many of us who will erroneously believe, oh, the thing I can't keep doing this, I'm failing. What I need to do here to create the breakthrough is push all the way through. I need to push through it. So this would be like if you went to the gym, you lifted those weights that were too heavy for you, you injured yourself, but you're like, oh, it's good injury. This is the part where I'm building my muscles. And you went to the back to the gym and you lifted those 600-pound weights again. And you just kept doing that. So that's part of the problem with trying to discover it ourselves. We can kind of do a bit of work, but we run the risk of injuring ourselves and not really being able to discern where the in and the out is. Where is that zone that we want to work with? And this is why I have a job. This is why leadership is something that requires cultivation and development and training. And this is why coaching is a profession I hold with a great deal of reverence and am a stand for other people to do the same thing if they want to be in this work, which is we can't help other people discern this kind of window of practice for themselves until we've been supported to discern it for ourselves. And most of us are resistant to that. We want to be right. We don't want to submit to the vulnerability that would be required to let someone else be able to tell us and reveal to us something we can't see about ourselves. This is why most of the time, even for something as silly and small as hiring a physical trainer, not to say that their work is silly, but the resistance to it, we could argue, might be a bit silly. And yet we have that resistance. if you're anything like me, and you may not be, there is a part of me that doesn't like to have anyone's support, because that, there's a bit of a story way back there, created very young, but still there, that like that is weakness, that is vulnerability, and vulnerability will be leveraged against you. So better to just handle it on your own, do it all on yourself. So this is one of the things men's work really provided me, was the opportunity to be in practice with another man and have him witness me and support me. Because what's easier for me is fuck off. I don't need your support, and I don't want you to see me struggling or any of that. I'm going to go over here and practice. So that's the work that there is to do, is to work with a coach, to work with a leader, to really allow ourselves to be vulnerable in that way, to be vulnerable to the idea that we don't necessarily know best. In fact, it's almost impossible for us to discern the whole picture because we are in it. We don't have, our frame of reference is obscured by the fact that we exist inside of it. Whereas a good coach, a good leader can stand off. They still have their own frame of reference, but those doing the work at a deep level have done a lot of work to remove all of as much of their stuff as they can, so they can just offer you the reflection and then be in an inquisitive conversation with you that allows you to discover more deeply than you can on your own where you are in that window. So the frustrating thing for David here is like the question's kind of, how do I know where I am? You to some extent you cannot. I'm going to give you guys a few practices, a few places to look so you can work with this, but like this is part of the absolute certainty I feel about the security of my job in this profession, is that one, you cannot build a robot, at least I don't believe you can build a robot that will ever be able to fully, well, who knows, maybe you would be able to, but for the foreseeable future, we can't really build a robot that can truly, well, there's a parcel being delivered to my door by Bay. A robot that could truly be in an entire state of being and feeling with another human, unless we cross the Turing barrier, at which point that robot is a human. I would say, like, if a robot can feel all the nuances and I can feel all those same nuances from it, I would say at that point it's indistinguishable from humanity. And who knows what happens at that point? That's probably the technological singularity, and then we all, I don't know, go to space or die or something. The other reason I feel such security about coaching as a profession is that we cannot see our blind spot. We cannot fully see ourselves. And so this transformational work really requires being a yes, allowing other people that can move their own stuff out of the way enough to be with you, not to be with themselves, but to be with you and support you in seeing what you cannot. And that's why the masters that you see, like if you go into the world and you look for masters, the true masters work with masters. I'm going to put this word in quotes because I don't think the original term for guru was necessarily a bad one, but these days the connotation is like a guru is someone kind of prophesizing wisdom without really doing their own work. And so what separates the masters from the gurus is the gurus have reached a conclusion that they now have it and do not require anyone's hand on their shoulder, do not require any further work of their own, do not require working with a master. I say that the masters are those committed to working through this stuff ongoingly with those that support them, because they know at no point can I ever truly see all of me. Maybe if you meditate for like 20 years and become some super master, that's possible. But my experience is it's not. And so that's what I say, because you're here to hear me, not to hear those other people. Hey, America, nice to have you with us. America as a country, but also America, you as an individual. And Andrew, you say you definitely bought into getting support from a coach for overall direction. Definitely have resistance to get support outside of that, like a physical trainer at this point. I so get it. There's a point where coaching then became the safe place I would allow that vulnerability, but nowhere else. So I was resistant to working with nutritionists, resistant to working with a physical trainer, because I want to just funnel everything through my coach. I still do. Like she's the, I don't know what the right word is, like the first stop. Everything kind of goes through her in that relationship we've created. She's well, not everything, but like that's usually where I begin, and then outwards to other people that can help me. But I really can empathize with this idea of, yeah, I'm okay to be supported over here with this particular flavor, but not over here with all of these. And that's often what we do when we have some flavor of wanting to hold on to the security of being able to do it ourselves. We create silos where we can allow others to make a difference for ourselves, and then they're silos. They're like bubbles in a sea of not letting people make a difference for ourselves. And I would assert that well, at least the path I'm working over and over continuously and always kind of climbing this mountain is to let more and more people make a difference for me. That requires letting them make a difference you don't want them to make. Like, to really be open to allow people to make a positive difference, it also requires a willingness to allow them to make a negative difference. If I'm showing up to the world on guard to not let what you say have any impact on me because I'm worried you're going to say something shitty about my show or my face or whatever, it's going to make it harder for me to allow anything positive to come in. So our porousness is it's a single membrane. We allow the world in or we don't allow the world in. So we have to develop the resilience, the ability to allow people to make a difference, have an impact on us, and then to find our own truth as that happens, rather than I can have my own truth by keeping all of you out. That's another way we would end up contracting from the world. Good chat, guys. Let's hit a few other of these guys. So we talked about stretching yourself versus honoring your capacity. Andrew, since you put a question, I want to make sure we hit that. So let's talk about that. So Andrew says, I have a question around actually supporting someone to move past the fears, roadblocks, or walls that are in their way. Right now, I feel like I'm having some great coaching conversations where the person is ready to take action by the end of the call. But as we come towards the next coaching call, they aren't getting in a pre-call coaching form, and there's a dynamic where I can sense that the practices did not happen or the steps weren't taken. I'd say I'm fairly unattached to the situations and standing for that possibility, but is there a different way I could support them? So this is one of the places coaches and leaders burn out when attempting to support people, especially absent a lot of their own training and a lot of their own development with their own coach and leader. The reason for this is that two things tend to happen when people tell us they're going to do something and then have resistance. To be clear, resistance has many, many, many forms. The broadest distinction I would create for resistance is active and passive. So active resistance would be that you wrote a sticky on your monitor that said, floss your teeth. And every morning you get up and you look at that sticky and say, tomorrow. So you are actively resisting doing the thing that you've set out to do. You know it, you're aware of it, and you're choosing otherwise. Procrastination is a good example of active resistance, where I'm like, I know I need to polish this pen, but instead I'm going to read this book. I know I need to do that thing, blah, blah, blah. So I'm actively resisting it. Passive resistance is less conscious, but still allows us to get away with not doing the thing we want to do. So passive resistance might sound like, I just was so busy this week, I didn't think to do that thing. So that's resistance. We call that resistance because of course you're so busy. Of course you wouldn't think to do the thing. Anytime you're trying to broaden your range and create something in your life that is not already there, well, your life doesn't currently have space for that. You don't have a black void right here in your life that says space for doing the thing I'm kind of scared of and not yet comfortable with, but will definitely do someday. No, your life is replete. It's filled with everything you currently have time for, and it does not have space for anything more, and it does not have space for anything less. Your life is as it is. We expand to fill our range. So anytime you're taking on a practice that's going to move you out of the default and towards new possibility, almost certainly you won't have space for it. And consequently, just being too busy is a form of passive resistance. It's sort of like going along with your current of your daily life and operating with the hope that things will go different, but they actually won't. So those are our types of resistance. And all of what we're talking, there's a million forms they could take. I didn't want to do it. I was too busy. I was afraid it would disturb my kids. My wife really hates this thing, so I need to find a place to do it, and I just didn't find time to do it. A million reasons. All of it some kind of resistance to what's next. So what happens when people show up with resistance is one of two things, especially when we're standing for them to create something new in their life. One is we get attached. Two is we get resigned. Our resignation is like, you know what? I'm just going to stop caring if you do anything. Doesn't matter. I'm just going to stop worrying about it. And so from that resignation, we just shrug our shoulders. And this you can hear in coaches and leaders who say like, well, they might word it like, I have a distinction around leadership. I never require anyone to do anything. Yeah, that's great. But then what's the difference between them talking to you versus talking to a 2x4? Like they could tell the 2x4 the same thing that they're telling you, and also the 2x4 wouldn't. They just wrote down on the 2x4, this is what I say I'm going to do. They come back next week, nothing happens, end of story. That's resignation. It kind of, you can frame it like, oh yeah, well, I'm allowing them to expand into their own leadership. But what we're not doing is supporting them to address their resistance in any kind of meaningful way. So that's resignation. The other side of the equation, let me speak to that. When we become resigned, we become bored and uninspired because we're kind of like, who the fuck cares? There's no stakes in the game anymore for us. And so I often, when coaches come to me that have gone through this particular path, often part of their complaint is, I feel like I need a new level of client. I need to up level my client game. I need to go after bigger, better people. It's not that going after bigger, better people is bad or wrong or anything like that. It's that they're trying to use that to solve this problem that's actually a function of them not being able to work through this and stand for someone without getting resigned. So it kind of like one to the other to the other. And then they're like, if I could only find a higher level of client who's up to more in their life and really committed to change instead of just talking about it. Yeah, those people are going to do the exact same fucking thing with you. Guarantee. Because everyone's resistant, no matter what level of client you talk about. Moving beyond you could say like, not Richard Branson, he does crazy shit. Yep, I guarantee you, if you sat Richard Branson down with me and he and I talked about what he wants and we got clear on some possibility outside of his range, his resistance would probably look like him running off and building a new company. And I'd be like, Richard, you said you want more presence. How's this going? Well, I'm really excited about this. Whatever. Kind of doing a little bit like a Clint Eastwood interviewing Barack Obama, for those that remember that weirdness. So I'm not going to keep doing that. But anyhow, everyone has resistance. So that's resignation. Uninspired, bored, start to go looking for the next shiny client that will solve this problem. And you're basically trying to solve the problem of your own creation through an external means, which is what we do as humans. Let's go to the other side. By the way, this applies to leadership and coaching. So if you are standing for someone as a leader and they keep doing this, what typically happens from resignation there is eventually you relate to them, you decide they're not a candidate for leadership, or you start managing around them. Managing around someone is like, this person's not going to achieve that. We're not going to fire them. How do we mitigate for that fact? That's the death of leadership. It's a really bad thing because then you end up with like this boulder in the middle of a stream, a flow that you have to pass around. It's a mess. So boredom, the resignation has serious consequences for you and for your teams. Now we go to the other side. This is where you're standing for people and you're attached. You become attached. You said you were going to fucking do this shit and you didn't. And your micro expressions might belie this, but who you're being, like the way you deliver that information might be less harsh, but that's the energy that we have. Like, they're not willing, they're stopping. From there, we become attached. And so what happens from our attachment is we start saying like, you know what, I'm going to call you, or I'm going to text you every night at 9 p.m. to make sure you did that thing. Or I'm going to email you every day. Or I want you to send me an email every morning and I'm going to read it and you're going to tell me what you did. So now we're up in our client's grill. We're up in their face, forcing them to do this. We're making it happen. We're not supporting them to overcome their own resistance. We're shoving them through their own resistance. So what happens here, this side leads to burnout. Coaches doing this are exhausted. They find that they never have enough time. Coaching just feels so tiring and it's exhausting. And boy, you got to really separate yourself from the client to do that work, Adam. No, that's the solution they've created. That's like the analog to the finding the shiny new, really committed client. They're sort of like, oh, I got to figure out how to better separate myself so that I'm isolated and then I don't take on their stuff. There's kind of some truth to that, but not in the way they're thinking. They're thinking like, I got to be cut off from the heart. I got to just not, they're kind of trying to go from their attachment over to the resignation. Oh, I just wouldn't care. It's easy. And so this is what most people do. They flop back and forth between these two places. So as a leader, when you become attached, you end up micromanaging. And what that does is it erodes trust in your people. It erodes trust in your culture because who the leader is being is the culture. So the way you can imagine culture in an organization like a pyramid with you at the top. So whoever you lead, there's culture being created underneath you. And then you could go up one step in the pyramid and be like, who leads you? Great. You're a function of their culture. And at the very top, the C-level executives, they are creating the fullness of the culture. So it all kind of trickles down and has overlap and stuff. So you, as a leader getting attached, you end up micromanaging people. You erode trust both in themselves and in across the culture. You create huge issues in terms of your own time. You find yourself exhausted because you have to keep doing this stuff. You're babysitting, you're managing your people rather than developing their leadership. And so consequently, what then happens is these people get burnt out and then they leave the organization or they want to exit management. Maybe I just want to go back and be an engineer at some point, stuff like that. So there's, again, consequences both sides. Now we go to your question, Andrew, which is like, okay, great. So how do we work with this then, dude? What do we actually do? What we actually do is we stand for people and we get curious about what's going on without ever taking it on board ourselves. So the highest place that a coach or a leader can stand with a client or a direct report is, I don't need you to do anything different. You can come and work with me for a year and you can do everything exactly the same way you've always done it. And that is okay with me. For the leader, it's a little different, but it's the same stand that they're taking, which is, I don't need you to do anything different. You can stay in this position and you can not change one bit. There will be consequences to that. Just like there'd be consequences if the client did that. One of the consequences in the coaching relationship is the client's probably going to feel like they wasted their money and their time. But that's okay. The coach's job is to be able to stand in that. I'm okay if you end this feeling like you wasted your time and your money, because maybe that's the only way there is for you to get how bankrupt this approach is. I'm okay with that. Maybe that's your path. The leader, I'm okay with you doing nothing different. There will be consequences to that. You will probably get stepped over for leadership because we are looking for people that can expand their range. And if you're unwilling to do that, that's okay, but we'll probably just keep you here. This is probably where your career will end its trajectory. It'll stay here. We're not going to fire you, at least yet. Although over time that might happen if the industry grows and you stay where you are. We can't, there's just some realities. But I want you to know I don't need you to do anything, and I'm okay with that. If you want to do something different, now either coach or leader can say this, if you want to do something different, I'm here to support you in achieving that. So that gives us the baseline for how we're being with people. I don't require you to change. I don't require you to do anything different. At this point, you might be thinking, that's starting to sound a bit like that resignation you talked about, Adam. So here's where it's different, is that when people show up, first of all, who we're being, which is always the background, is given by what I just described. What we're doing when people show up not having done this stuff and being a yes and a request for our support is that we just get curious about what's happening. So they don't do the pre-coaching form. For example, what Andrew's talking about is before a coaching call, someone sends us a form 24 hours beforehand saying, here's what I want to work on. Here's what I said I was going to do. Here's what I did. Here's what I didn't do. Update on my projects, whatever. So often what happens is people send us stuff and then we're like, I don't want to bug them about that. Let's just get into the stuff. They've had a hard day. Or they might not send us something. Or like once I had a client, every month he would send me the pre-coaching form at 1:29, 1 minute before our calls. I got to address that, right? One, because we have an agreement to send it 24 hours beforehand. And two, because that's weird. Is that serving him? What's that doing? So from resignation, I would just be like, it's not my job to force you to do anything. If you want to use the pre-coaching form and empower it, great, let's do that. If not, no big deal. We'll just move past it. From attachment, I would start calling them 24 hours before and say, did you send it to me? Are you doing it? Are you sitting down? Or any kind of thing of that flavor. From not requiring them to do anything different and being a stand for their transformation and moving beyond their resistance, what I do is they show up and I say, hey, I noticed the last 4 weeks, and actually probably more than that, every day before our coaching, 1 minute before our session, you send me the form. So one, over here, I just don't have time to read it. So it doesn't end up getting read on this side. And I wonder, like it occurs to me like you might be rushing through that at the last minute. Is that how it is for you? Yeah. Okay, great. What's going on there? Is that serving you? How come you're not bringing that as a conversation? So what we do as coaches and as leaders is we don't force people to do anything. And we don't resign ourselves to the fact that I don't have to touch this. I'm going to let you just keep doing whatever. Instead, we bring the conversation to them. We have them look at how they're showing up and have them check in for themselves to see if that's working for them. Is this empowering you? Is this getting you the results that you want? Is this supporting you? Hello, Grimby. Is this supporting you? Where else in your life does this happen? Does this support you in other places in your life? So we're inviting them to notice the way they show up and then to be at choice. That gives them the possibility to choose something different if they want. So this gives you the foundation for how we be with people, how we show up with them, all of this stuff we do. The final piece, hello, Bay. The final piece is that doing this one time may not be enough. We all have a lot of resistance, and our resistance, or put differently, our ego and its attempts to keep us safe in the status quo inside the range we know are very subtle and very effective, which is why we've been able to survive as long as we have. But to move from surviving to thriving requires different patterning, different ways of showing up. And so in order to work with this, we have to be willing to continue showing up this way. And that's where a lot of the coaches' work in the background becomes so important. Because as people say they're going to do something and then they show up and they don't do it, it's just going to nag at you. It's going to annoy you, especially if you're like, well, I would always fucking do that. Then you're going to have judgment. And it's not wrong to have judgment. In fact, it's important. It means you're alive. But it also means that you need to move through it. And so as I might bring like, Rachel, my client's driving me bonkers. They keep blah, they keep blah. Can you support me to see them as they're light, to get back to holding them lovingly, and to see that the way they're showing up is perfect and exactly the way they need to show up? And so again, hopefully you can see from this how important it is that we are working with someone. When we take that away, it's like a house of cards collapsing. It all falls to pieces because there's no stopgap. There's no backstop for any of it. Andrew says, multiple clients have mentioned to me that they feel like I've been disappointed or they are letting me down, which is really interesting because I don't feel let down at all, but a bit sad that the possibility in their life is being missed in a sense. I think that's a beautiful thing to share with your clients, Andrew, to share like, yeah, I'm a bit sad, because I can see what's possible for you. And, it feels like it's just not attainable. You're missing out on that opportunity. And so, yeah, there's sadness, but that's okay. That's part of this work. Part of this work is not for us to never feel anything, but to be willing to feel everything that we feel and to be responsible for its impact. So for a client, if we're feeling judgment, we got to own that and say, yeah, you're right. I too have judgment. And I'm going to bring that to my coach. And what I can tell you, at least right now, is that as a leader, I have a really hard time being with my own unwillingness to do stuff. And I kind of tend to hit myself in the back of the head with a bat. And so I'm really judgmental on myself. And so when you aren't doing that stuff, I think that's really that my judgment gets showing up that way. What do I need to clean up with you? Because I want you to know it's not about you. I'm really clear. It's really about myself. And I'm a stand that you get to, I want to honor your process. So what I'm doing there is I'm owning that there's judgment. I'm not pretending it's not in the space if it is, but I'm also being responsible for the impact. I'm clear if I have judgment, it's probably going to make a mess over there. So I need to own it because it's already in the space anyhow. Talking about it just allows us to acknowledge what's there. I got to own it, but then I also have to check in. I've got to be able to distinguish in the moment, to be committed to going to my coach, working this out with them, all of that sort of stuff. So I can then be with them and allow them to be with me, and we can get back on the same place. That's how the work progresses. That is really challenging. It's hard for us to own this stuff. Andrew finishes by saying it's easier than being able to sit with it. It's easier to do whatever, I guess, have an attachment than it is to sit with the fact that this coaching relationship may, in fact, not create anything big, so to speak. I had a client, I think I've told this story a number of times. We had a bunch of conversations at the start to get clear on what they wanted, what was available, blah, blah, blah. They paid me a giant sum of money to work with me for a year and then did nothing. Not entirely nothing, but for the most part, they just kept playing inside their range. And they used the awareness of coaching to like a neat shiny bauble to play with. Like, oh, now I'm doing that other thing. It's so fascinating. They did what we call becoming fascinated with their survival mechanism. So our survival mechanism might be like, oh yeah, one of the things I notice I do is I use being really busy to not do the thing I'm scared of doing. Awesome awareness. What are you going to do next? And then being fascinated with our survival mechanism would be like showing up week after week and be like, it was crazy. This week, I used being busy with my pop bottle to not do things. I'm amazed. This is so cool. I'm really learning. Yeah, but who cares? Yeah, you notice the next iteration, but is your life going to be about noticing all of the ways that you stop yourself? Or do you want to make your life about not letting this stop you anymore and stepping into what you're afraid of? And so again, it's not my job to force my clients to go anywhere. I would bring that conversation to her, and she couldn't choose out of it. She was caught, stuck for a variety of reasons. And so my job, I did a lot of work. I had a lot of conversations to keep working this out because for me, I have a lot of judgment if I'm just staying stagnant. I don't, which is often, some of the breakthroughs in spirit for me have been a willingness to slow down and just be quiet, not moving forward, so I can hear the voice of spirit. I can allow myself to receive guidance for what's next. And so, of course, I have judgment of this client. What the fuck are you doing? You paid a crazy sum of money, 50K, to come and be in these conversations, and you're using them to fap, to masturbate. I didn't say that. That's the sound of my judgment. And so I bring that to my coach. I do exercises. I'd work through stuff, get myself complete, be able to see her in her greatness, sit back down with her and be in that conversation. And then once again, yeah, I notice it seems like once again, instead of doing the thing you say you want to do, you're getting fascinated by the thing that you say is in the way. Is this what you want? Is this working out for you? Well, I think maybe now the reason I'm not doing the thing I want to do is because I just don't want it. Okay, maybe. So what do you want? Oh, I don't know. I think I'm just going to sit and not do anything. Okay. So what should we talk about? This is the point where the conversations become really kind of awkward for the client because what's happened is they're giving up any leadership in their life, right? What they're choosing is, I just want to do nothing, which is totally fine. But then coaching is about supporting you to get from wherever you are to wherever you want to be. And so doing nothing might exist already inside their range. So it's like they've chosen something for themselves, which is a function of where they already are. If coaching is to get you from where you are to where you want to be, and where you are includes everything currently in your range, basically they're saying, I just want to do nothing and hang out here. And so the coaching conversation becomes kind of moot because they don't actually need any support to do that. And so at that point, they're confronted a bit by the fact that the game they're playing in their life, while not wrong, is small. It's a game of just being content and staying where they are. That's not wrong for someone to choose that, but it requires that they come to terms with that. and they usually have a bunch of judgment, like, well, I should want to grow. And so like that's the thing for us to work on in the coaching. But before they can kind of get that judgment into space, they've got to be in these awkward conversations where they're like, well, I don't know what to do. What should we do? What do you normally do with clients? I sit with them and I love them and I think they're cool and I let them determine our direction because that's how this works. Well, but I don't know what my direction is. I get that. Me neither. So what do you think we should do? Well, maybe we just end the call. Okay, cool. Want to talk next week? Yeah, great. Come back next week. I feel like I wasted the last call and I feel like you want, so now they're going to project their judgment of themselves onto me. I feel like you really want me to do something more and I feel bad and I feel guilty for you. Okay, great. Well, I want to share. Here's the stuff. I brought this to my coach, and at least over here now, I'm totally okay with you being right here. So what do you need? What do you need to hear from me or anything? So it's a really challenging place. Basically, what happens in this is an extended version of what Andrew was asking about. But what happens is that people try, I believe everyone in their life has a desire to grow beyond their current capacity. But what happens is we become afraid of that and we learn to quell that desire. And then what that heartfelt desire gets replaced with is a head-based need to transform, which is like, well, I should be more than I am because otherwise I'm not honoring my legacy or I'm not doing my parents right or I'm not blah, 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 blah. So we have this like should in our mindset that it tells us you should transform, you should create breakthroughs, you should do more than you're currently doing. And before we can get down to the heartfelt desire that would actually lead us towards wanting to do more, we have to bankrupt the headfelt need. So that's what my client was doing. She was sort of like, well, I want to just do nothing. Great. And now that headfelt need she has that she should be something different is going to fight with her. She's going to project it onto me. She's going to feel judgment, all that stuff. And so she sits stagnant, doing nothing for a while. And if she can get down there and sit at this event horizon of stagnancy, she just sits and does nothing and is bored, eventually over time, I would assert she's going to start to feel and hear a desire in her heart. And that desire is going to go, hey, there is something we really want to do. And that's going to allow, from there, she can start to move forward. But until she's fully bankrupted the should that she can move forward up here, this voice of the heart is going to get twisted into that. And then it becomes something for her to resist against in her life. I should go over towards this thing, but at the same time, fuck you for telling me I should do that. And then they're in that conflict. So it can't really work. Can you elaborate on your question, America? So that's how it goes. And you can imagine, hopefully, how challenging it is for me as coach to sit there with people and to trust that's the breakthrough. They're in the process of creating their breakthrough. Doesn't look the way that I want it to. It doesn't look the way that my training growing up has sort of told me a breakthrough or being right or doing the correct stuff in life goes. And so consequently, my judgment shows up and blah, blah, blah. So as I'm speaking this stuff, hopefully those of you listening can really get how deep and how much it demands of us and our ability to be with people and life is required to lead and to coach. And this is why we would just assume, people for that person would be like, well, this is Gavin Quiney, my dad quote, like sometimes, Adam, people just need a swift kick up the ass. That woman, that client I just described is looking for me to give her a swift kick up the ass because that's how she's motivated herself into everything else in her life. The head-based I should do something just becomes very specific and then becomes my foot hitting her in the ass. There's my should. Now I'll do the thing for as long as I'm willing to avoid having my foot kicked up my ass, and then I'm going to turn around and be a big fuck you and rally against the foot up my ass and then come back to this conflict and then just being stuck here. So we all have this ingrained from our childhood and what we were trained belief that we know what's required. And in fact, if we get deeper and deeper and deeper, we can see like how resistant we are to letting people show up exactly as they are and how little trust we have in ourselves and in other people that they will unfold like a beautiful flower growing out of a plant if we only provide them the fertile ground, the soil, the clearing to unfold into. Someone I was working with just yesterday, I'm waiting for you, America, to type out the remainder of your question. Someone just yesterday that I was working with, we were looking at the way it goes is they're learning how to be more responsible in their life, but they have responsibility and blame conflated, meaning they can start to be like, oh, I can see how I'm creating this, which is great because then you have the power to change it. But I can see how I'm creating this is got, and I fucking shouldn't be creating this layered on top. So there's a layer of blame on top of the responsibility. So this client's learning to distinguish those two, to pull them apart so they can relinquish the blame and just be responsible. And as we were looking at what that's about, we sort of looked around and they could see, oh, I can see where I do this to other people just as much as myself. And what they could distinguish as we looked at this was that they're afraid if they let go of the blame, they won't do stuff. It's like if I don't yell and scream at myself, if I don't fuel myself with a whip in my back, I'm not going to move towards what I really want. I'm not going to take action. I'm not going to grow. The only way I can grow is by whipping myself in the back. And so that's the tool of blame that they're using. And they consequently do it to other people as well as to themselves. And so, first of all, you can imagine if I have a client who's learned to do this themselves, they're going to go looking for me to do this to them. That's what we do. We look to enroll other people, to draw them in to do the same thing to us that we do to us. So there's a lot of work. She's, like everyone, very good at like trying, like sort of just creating that energy that would have me like blame her. There's a lot of work for me to stand outside of that and no, this isn't your fault. It's not your fault at all. You can be responsible for it. It's not your fault. So it's very challenging. There's another area where it can be really tough because it's so natural and we just fall into that with them. We get into the dance. America, you ask, how can you tell if someone is playing too small in what they say they want to do? Well, one of the great places to look is if they already know how to achieve it. So often when I ask people what they want, there's a couple responses I'll get. The first response will be like, they just don't know. They flat out have no idea what they want. So these are people that have spent so much of their life focused on what they need to do that the voice of their heart, what you need to do comes from your head. The voice of what you want comes from your heart. They've spent so much time thinking about what they need to do, they can no longer hear the voice of their heart. It's been subsumed, collapsed in on, it's buried. So for those people, you know, even just doing the work to support them to get clear on something they want can be like edgy for them. Sometimes the answer is people are like, I want clean drinking water across Africa. Great, amazing goal, super good, love that. What do you want this week? Clean drinking water across Africa. But let's scale this. So those people are just like, so far, all they can see is the 6,000 pound. Notice the weights are getting bigger. The 6,000 pound weights at the gym. That's what I want. So they would be supported to bring it down. And usually you can tell that that's where they are. One, because it just seems like physically impossible. Like physically, logistically, I would imagine it's impossible to just solve clean drinking water in the space of a week, let alone probably a year. I don't want to trample too much on someone's possibility, but the third category are people that are very pragmatic and clear about what they want and what they need to do to get there. So like, yeah, I want to be a lawyer. And so what I need to do is I want to I have a friend who I love very dearly and he's incredible. And one of the things he wants to do is create a design video games, create a video game company. So he's got this plan he's working on. And he's got it all figured out. It's all very clear. It's all known. How many years until that can happen, what's going to happen next, the steps, how much you can expect, blah, blah, blah. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's inside our range. If we already know all of the steps to get there, we cannot be in the unknown. Otherwise, that's by definition off base. We can't, right? To be in the unknown. is to not know. And so we're looking for that place where it's like a goal that's physically possible. It moves them, but they don't yet know how to get there. They're not sure how to make that happen, how to create that. And usually, as you're working with people to expand past what they already know and invite them, like, okay, but like, what beyond that? What else? What are you settling for in that goal? And what would you really love to have if you didn't have to know how to get there? Then you're going to start to feel emotion show up in their voice. It might be fear, it might be the emotion of constriction and resistance, or the energy of that. It might be any of those sort of things. So a lot of this is feeling them and feeling like where we start to get beyond the realm of the head and knowing everything. And then instead of that, getting into the realm of the heart. And from there, you will feel an energetic shift. And the place to do this, America, so I hear you saying the unknown is a requirement. It's a, I'm iffy about answering that question because it's going to give you like some head-based stuff. So the place for you, I'm going to make an assertion, would be to have someone support you in getting clear on your impossibilities. Because I can remember talking to you, and my experience was with love, you had stuff pretty well figured out for the most part. Like you knew what you were going to do up to a year hence. And so you will feel much better over there when they're in this space that we're talking about, as you get to have the practice of having someone support you to hang out in this space. And then it'll stop being something you need to intellectually figure out, because you'll be like, oh, I know this feeling in my body. Oh, as they're talking about this, I can feel it. I'm a little nervous. I'm a little scared that I don't know how to support them to get there as a coach. That's exactly where you want to be. That's a beautiful space to be in with your client, because now you're both in the unknown. And all you really need to do there is stand for the possibility of coaching, that it doesn't require us knowing how to get there. All that it requires is this person's gifts and magic and the support from someone off the space with them, the coach, to help them imbue and discover and unfold and to trust their own path. So ultimately that's the requirement, is allow yourself to play this game, allow yourself to be stood for, to have someone coach you or to stand for you, to actually create this kind of stuff and then create it yourself. And then it stops being something you have to intellectually look for. Having said that, I'm going to give you the answer to your question, which is, yeah, usually the unknown is the requirement. If you already know how to get there, it's probably in your range. If you don't yet know how to get there, it's probably not yet in your range. Andrew, you say that would be an interesting topic in itself. How would we recognize as leader and coach when we are falling into that same pattern that the individual is already doing to themselves? That'd be an interesting topic in itself. How would we recognize as a leader and coach when we are falling into that same pattern? Oh, I see. Like if the client, if their thing is to blame themselves and whip themselves, how do we know as coach if we're falling into that? Yeah, by working with our coach. I know I'm a broken record on this, but like this is the, there's fundamental laws in our universe. One of them is entropy. Over time, we move from more order of our universe. And so one of the bedrocks of this work we're talking about of coaching, unequivocally, is we do our work with our coach. We do our work with our own leader. We get supported if we are committed to leading others or to coaching others and developing leadership through either of those ways. We bring on our own people. And that's how we can tell, because that person supports us to see what we cannot see, supports us to see the current that we're in the ocean. When you're in an ocean swimming, you can't see the current you're in. You can barely feel it. You're just like, yeah, I'm swimming. Why the heck am I 10 meters that way? I thought I was swimming in this direction. Someone on the shore can tell you, you're in a current, man. You're going to swim this way. So you get out of the current. It's a rip. So that's how we do that. And America, I think that's brilliant awareness that you can't tell the difference between your headiness and your resignation. It's not possible for you to tell that. That's another reason why we would work with a coach. I can't tell it for me either. Sometimes it occurs like, no, I'm really empowered. Like one of the games I would play is, here's the best I can, here's the constraints in my life. Here's the best I can do given those constraints. So it'd be like, well, the soonest I get into law school is probably 6 months. The longest I could wait reasonably would be about 5 years. So I'm going to figure out how to do it in 6 months. Rather than, what if it was all possible, Adam? What if you could do it in a month? So my resignation, my at the effect to the world around me and my beliefs about it occurred to me as being empowered, as being wide open to possibility. No way, I'm not resigned. I'm doing this stuff. I'm maximizing. I'm more optimized than these other boners. It's fun to call people boners. I'm more optimized. I'm more efficient. I'm more productive. I'm winning this game, stupid. Yeah, but Adam, you were winning the game denoted by this tiny box. So that's how we can't see our resignation. It's invisible to us because we're in the frame of reference. And so that's why this work. That's the majesty of this work. That's why coaching and leadership are such sacred professions for the exact reason you described, America, and for the vulnerability they require in the client and the tremendous commitment to being to intimacy and to trust that the coach and the leader must generate. It's truly inhuman. And what I mean by that is like it's divine. What is human is for us to like lose faith in people, to get wounded by them, to be hurt when they don't do what they said they were going to do and we really believed in them, to take their fear and the way they manifest their fear personally, to be with all of that, and then to go back to the person supporting us and to work ourselves out with their support and then bring it back to the client so that we can just be with them and love them exactly the way they are, exactly the way they've showed up, not taking any of it personally or like having moved through taking it personally. That's an unbelievable degree of reverence and sacredness in terms of how we hold another human being. And that's why we can't do this work without training. We can't do this work without masters on with their arms or their hands on our back. That's the path to mastery. So a bit evangelistic today, perhaps, but feels appropriate. We're going to finish this with a sip of this. What is this flavor? Ooh, peach and honey. Aha is the brand. We don't have bubbly right now. We have peach and honey. Cheers. Thank you, America. I take that and I appreciate it. Um, the forge is full. The forge is filled up for 2021, which is amazing. It was the most effortless enrollment period ever. So there was no forcing anything. There was no me marketing or generating leads or any of what LinkedIn tells me I'm supposed to be doing. What there was sharing about this art, this work that we're up to, being inspired about it, making a difference and serving people where I can, and letting them know that it's available if they'd want, and not requiring them to do anything, letting go of the attachment, working it out as I did with you, America, when my attachment does show up, and then truly letting this be created from spirit. So in partnership with spirit, allowing the people that are there to talk to me to come talk to me, the people that are not there to sign up to be in a conversation with them and let that be their path. And so now we're in the planning phase for the next 2 months, working stuff out, getting gifts, planning our retreat, all of the cool stuff. So it's very exciting. Thank you, everyone that's followed along with it. I think we're going to wind down there for this week. So I hope you all have an awesome weekend. Looks kind of gray and gloomy outside. I think that's probably forest fire smoke, if my hunch is correct. And I hope that you don't have forest fires where you are. Love you guys. It's so cool to get to spend this time together. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.